Okay, good morning, Shavua Tov Malach. We'll start as we usually do with a Dvar Torah, and then we'll continue our Hilchos Shvis. It could be maybe this time we'll do the maybe the last time for Hilchos Shvit. Sort of covered most of the basic halachos. Can't say that we went into the depth of everything, the basics. Just to show you something that we had done in the shir after davening yesterday, after meeting yesterday, which is also at Hilchos Shvit. But just to show you the depth of where it can get to, we won't do such we won't have such discussions in this class. But for example, we discussed yesterday whether a pot with dirt and barren of anything growing in it, just empty, just the dirt inside, whether that dirt is considered, and it's a tzitz nakub. There are holes in the pot. So normally if there was something growing from the pot, that would have been considered connected to the ground. And we mustn't do all kinds of things in that for that plant. But when it's empty, is it considered connected to the ground? Does ground connect to ground, or it's only the roots of the plant that make it considered connected to the ground? But if it's just bare earth, soil, it's not connected to the ground. That's a whole big discussion. And even when there is something growing in the pot, and then definitely the roots are considered connected, and we have to be careful of what we do or don't do in that pot. But is the earth around it considered connected also via if we consider empty, just soil, disconnected, right? So is the pot connected only where the roots go down, or all the earth around it already it's considered connected to the ground via the fact that the roots connected to the ground? So there's all kinds of discussions like that, which means if, for example, we hold that bare earth without anything growing in it is not considered connected to the ground, then we can even plant in that earth. Because as you're planting, you're not planting in the ground. You're planting in disconnected soil. It says v'shavta aretz. Land has to rest. It doesn't say that soil has to rest if it's disconnected with the ground. And then after you've planted something, so true, now that it's going to get when it's roots, right? When roots in the ground, then we have this other discussion whether the ground around, the soil around it is also considered connected or not, but itself is connected. But the first stage, or setting it up for planting, like plowing, sort of speaking, smoothing it out while it's still empty, would be allowed. So that's a whole discussion. We won't go into the different proofs that they bring to this side or to that. So just to show that there's always more and more depth to get into, and that's not the point of our shir. We really want to go back to Hilchos Shabbos eventually, but in the meantime, we have a little bit more to do on the basics of Hilchos Shemittah. But before, as I said, we'll do it Dvar Torah. As I was going over the parsha of Lech Lecha this past yesterday and the days before, it occurred to me, something that I first time noticed this point, and I gave almost I would say a superficial answer, and then I thought about it more, and I think I got to a more deeper answer, which will lead us to a nice, interesting understanding altogether. Noticing the way Hashem changes Avram's name from Avram to Avraham, and differently the way he changes Sarah's name from Sarai to Sarah. What is the difference? By Avram, it says, "Vayomer Elokim el Avram, lo yikare shimcha od Avram, ki im Avram yeh shemecha. Vayita av amon goyim, u'nitecha legoyim lachem mechalatzecha yetzeu." So Hashem speaks directly to Avram and notifies him that now his name is being changed. From now on, no one will call you Avram, rather Avraham. By Sarah, ויאמר אלוקים אל אברהם, שרי אשתך, לא תקרא את שמה שרי, כי שרה שמה. וברכתיה, נתתי לך ממנה בן. So, suddenly it dawned on me, why is Hashem speaking to Avram, notifying him that Sarah's name is going to change from Sarai to Sarah? Why not speak directly to Sarai? She was also a prophet. She was one of the 7 female prophets that we list.
With that her name was originally Yiska? And there's a tradition that it was.
Yeah, that's true. Her name was Yiska, right?
And that people just called her Sarai because of, I don't know, like a nickname or because it was like her status.
Her status, like right? Like a minister, right?
So now he's increased her status. So it's like Abraham's not going to call her Sarah, not Sarai. Like a change in her status as opposed to like her actual name, maybe it's still Yiska.
Yeah, but my point is not what the change is, but who Hashem refers to. Who is Hashem speaking to? If you would say that to Sarai, what's the difference? He would tell her that from now on, those who have called you Sarai, true, your name is Yiska, okay, but those who had called you Sarai will no longer call you Sarai, they'll be calling you Sarah. I don't see that.
I would say the classical answer to that question would be Avram was a Bucky in astrology, and in the stars he knew that Sarai couldn't have a baby. So since Avram knew that Sarai couldn't have a baby, that's why Hashem had to speak to him, because Hashem next promises him that don't worry about it, you're going to have kids, etc., etc. But Avram was not, because it doesn't work that way. So that's why Hashem Dafka spoke to Avram and told him that.
Okay, interesting. I didn't think of that answer. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Something to think about. Fine. So first, when I came up with this question, I would say beyond that, maybe that's something that makes it less specific to Sarai, and then David's answer here will not be good enough. I suddenly thought to myself, do we find anywhere that Hashem speaks to a woman? Yeah? Hagar is Malach Hashem. Remember, Malach Hashem el Hagar, an angel, not Hashem directly.
But of all the prophets, I don't know how they got their communication.
Right. Yeah, so I'm not talking about prophecies, because definitely we had female prophets who received all kinds of messages.
When a prophet receives a message,
it's direct, but it's not the actual words that are being said to him. It's right. It's not direct communication like that. It's more like an image, dreams, vision. They have to make out what does this mean. Not very direct. Moshe Rabbeinu was panim panim, but even Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Hashem spoke to them. It wasn't actually like Moshe, but it was close to it. You see the actual words. Whereas by women prophets, we looked it up at home. Even by Dvorah, she tells Barak that Hashem had commanded him to go out and fight, go out to war. But we don't find that Hashem speaks to her first and tells her this. So, for some reason, females, we don't find Hashem speaking to them directly. Rachel and Leah, for sure not. It's always Yaakov who's receiving the messages from Hashem and telling them what Hashem had told them to do. Never received it directly. And even though Sarah, Gdola me Avraham b'nevius, Sarah was greater than Abraham in prophecy. The level was higher. In this week's parsha, Hashem is going to tell Abraham to listen to Sarah. Everything she says. So how come Hashem never speaks to them directly?
Harav, he spoke to Chava directly.
Oh, right. So someone brought that up in our table, Chava's table. He said to Chava, he was actually, Hashem was rebuking her. How come you fed Adam from the forbidden tree? And then he says, Al Baal Bates, when he punishes her. Ve'elaisha amar, and then you're right. It says that directly to the woman. Ve'elaisha amar, al-ba beitz vonech ve'ronech. He punishes her. So rebuking and punishing, we do find. But it's a very negative message that she receives.
Yes.
Right. He gets that, but it's not the most pleasant thing, most pleasant example to give us. There's also, in this week's coming up, Parsha and Vayera, there is this uncertainty. We're not certain whether Hashem speaks to Sarah directly when he says, Vayomer lo ki tzachakt. Who says that to her? When she denies the fact that she had disbelieved this prophecy that she will have a son, bear a kid, 90 years old. She was laughing, meaning she wasn't believing. So, Vayomer Elokim el Avraham, lama ze tzachaka Sarah lemor, and so on. So Hashem speaks to Avram and asks him, how come Sarah was making fun of my prophecy, of my message to her, now in disbelieving? And then it says, "Vatechaches Sarah lemor lo tzachakti ki area." Sarah denies the fact that she made fun of it. Vayomer lo with an aleph. No, but tzachakt. You did laugh. Who says that? So that means again that he says that to her, seemingly. But also, ki tzachakt means directed to her. You can't say that he said that to Avram, continuing the speech to Avram, and say, no, she did laugh. He's saying it to her. So I checked in Rashi doesn't say anything. Who says that to her? The Hamek Davar, the Natziv, says like this. The pshat of the psukim sound like it's referring to Avram. When Hashem comes to Avram and tells him, how come Sarah made fun of my message? So it would seem that Avram Avinu approached her gently, I assume, and asked her, how come you made fun of Hashem's message? How come you did not believe in what Hashem tells you? So when she says, Vayomer lo ki tzachak, it seems like she's answering, it seems like it's she, Vatechaches Sarah lemor. She's answering Avram, denying the fact that she laughed. And then Avram is answering back to her, Vayomer lo ki tzachak. I know from Hashem. Hashem told me. You can't deny this. So the Nazi says the pshat is Avram saying that to her.
Well, Avram also laughed. Avram also didn't believe the Kodesh Baruch Hu.
No. So Chazal explained the difference.
Okay.
Right. That was, if you see the Unkelus, if you look at the Targum Unkelus, the way he interprets both words, each time, he interprets it differently. By Avram, it says, Vayitzchak Avram belibo. And Unkelus interprets it as Vechadi. Vechadi means he was full of happiness. There was a laughter of happiness. He was filled with happiness. Wow, how awesome, how great this is that we'll be having a child in the end. Whereas by Sarah, and we know this from Avram, from Hashem's reaction. Hashem's reaction to Sarah's laughter was different than Avram's laughter. That's where the Unkelus took it from. By Sarah, it says chayachat instead of chadi. Chadi in Aramaic means happiness. Chayachat means to murk, to make fun of, which leads to disbelief. Understanding that she wasn't a believer there. She wasn't believing it. So the Nasi says that Chazal in Bereshis Rabbah explained that Hashem spoke to her. Hashem says, Vayomer lo ki tzachak. It's Hashem saying it to her. So we do find that Hashem spoke to her directly. But then again, very similar to Chava. The only speech we have to a woman is to rebuke her. Vayomer lo ki tzachak. Yeah, right. I'm not giving this to women.
One of the best Torahs I've heard in this parsha ever.
Yeah.
Was the Rebbe of Gur. What's the first Rebbe of Gur? What's his name?
Chidushei Harim. Chidushei Harim.
No, he's the grandson.
Oh, the Sfas Emes. No, the first one was Chidushei Harim. He's the grandfather. His grandson was the Sfas Emes. Sfas Emes, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Why did Sarah laugh?
Yeah.
This is fantastic. I can't believe it's so good. If you look at the pasuk, she was standing behind the door. That's what it says, right?
Right.
Exactly. So it's very, if you look at the pasuk, it doesn't flow nicely at all. in my opinion, doesn't so fall nicely. Who's Shluach hara? Anyway, how does Sfas Emes approach this?
Yeah.
When she heard all about this, he says Ishmael was there, and he overheard and saw this whole conversation, and she was nervous, that Ishmael would do something very, very bad. The reason why she laughed was to show
him it's not true.
I don't take it seriously at all. It's only a joke. I don't take it seriously at all, and that's why she laughed.
Wow.
To the Sfas Emes.
Wow.
Because Ishmael oversaw this. He was a troublemaker, and she was nervous that he thought he was going to get everything. He was the Yoresh, etc., and that's why Sarah laughed.
Wow.
I thought that was revolving.
Yeah. Really amazing. But the question is then, why is Hashem rebuking her? If this is the reason, so it's a very good reason.
She's upon him. Okay, yeah, whatever.
No, but this has to be connected to, this has to be explained by. Yeah, that's possible. Okay.
If it was my favorite rabbi, I would take.
Take responsibility for it. Yeah. Okay.
In support of what you were saying, that it was Abraham rebuking her and not Hashem.
Yeah.
It seems like when Hashem talks to Abraham, the text always says, Hashem said, and then later again, Hashem said, but this time it just says,
Vayomer.
He said.
Right.
Usually if Hashem's talking, it'll say Hashem.
Say Hashem. Right. And then I would take your point that even if we accept what we obviously accept what Chazal say Hashem said that to her, but you're right, it still doesn't say Vayomer Hashem lo ki tzachak. The Torah sort of hides the fact, even if it's Hashem speaking to her, the Torah is hiding the fact that Hashem is speaking to her. Right?
The basic fear to ask if the Avot have to be considered as perfect people.
No, definitely not.
So if we say if somebody's flawed and they didn't, okay, so once in her life, whatever, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So at this particular point, let's just say she had a muna, or there was there was something like that's a flaw. We can't accept it, or
no, definitely. The Torah tells us this. If Hashem says, "How come you did not believe?" So it means she had a flaw, for sure.
But when you're hearing like Chidushei Torah, where somebody's saying, "Oh, it can't be she laughed. It has to be."
Right. That's why I asked.
No, that's
the question is what I referred to the Sfas Emes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's a whole other discussion. That's really going off on a tangent. That's a tangent. Yeah, that's a tangent. The Ramban, by the way, numerous times spells out. Yeah, last week's also from Lech Lecha and from Vayera. Several times he speaks about flaws that Chazal even don't detect in our forefathers, don't discuss, and he says, no, this was a flaw.
He comes down on Avram for going to
Egypt for this.
He comes down very
right
hard on him.
And for Sarah, that she made Hagar miserable. He also says that was a sin of Sarah. So it's not up to us. I wouldn't say that everyone can make up flaws in the Avos, but big commentators like the Ramban, they have the vision, the sight of purity to be able to say that, right. Anyhow, but
it's true that was a sin that how Sarah treated Hagar.
Right.
If that's true, we're still paying for it.
We're still paying for it, correct? Yeah. True. Anyhow, back to our discussion. So why don't we find Hashem speaking to women prophets, female prophets in Tanakh in general? So my first gut feeling was, my wife didn't like this one, is to teach us tzniut. Yeah, just tzniut, that it says in Pirkei Avos, Al tarbeh sicha im ha'isha. It says to men, don't speak much to women. Say hello, say how are you, and that's it. Even how are you isn't so simple. Lo shalim b'shlom isha klal.
I'm saying Hashem's a man.
Oh, that's exactly what my wife said. Exactly that. Hashem is the man. Hashem is above any sex. Right. So you can't say that. But still, I think the point is not from Hashem's point of view, but teaching us from our point of view. That when we learn the Torah, so Hashem is making us aware. It's mainly, this is also not true in our generation. But the Torah, after all, is written in masculine language. It doesn't say lo tirtzichi, lo tignevi, lo tinafi. There's lo tirtzach, lo tignov, lo tinaf. Masculine. So, and the message of tzniut, not to speak to women, is a message that only men have to get. Women can speak. It's just a man that's it's problematic for him to speak. So if the Torah wants to relay that message to us men, even though Hashem isn't a man, but Hashem is teaching us as men what not to do, not to be speaking too much to women. The messages came to them, but we don't see that direct speech face to face from Hashem to women. But then, thinking a bit further, after I didn't like this answer, I haven't had a chance to rediscuss this. I have to
You may want to do that
rediscuss it at home. Yeah. I thought of a totally different route, and I think it makes it much more powerful now, and much more in favor of the women, after all. We had this famous idea, the Rav Kook elaborates over it very much. The fact that women's nature, by nature, were created in a much holier status, much holier being than men, by nature. Why don't they need to fulfill the mitzvot aseh shazman grama? Not because they're on a lower level, rather than they're on a higher level. They don't need the timely mitzvot to remind them of Hashem. They don't need to be involved with so many actions that keep them en route, that keep them straight going with Hashem and believing in Hashem and always overcoming temptations and going off the route, off the derech. So you need many reminders to keep you on the way all the time, and to always make you aware of Hashem with all these mitzvot zman grama. And the bracha the women say in the morning, Shasani kirtzano, unlike men who say Shelo asani isha. That's very insulting in a way. Read that bracha simply, it's very insulting. A woman can't say Shelo asani ish. I'm not proud that I'm a woman. Asani kirtzano. He made me the way he wanted. He created me the way he wanted, meaning it's sort of secondary, whereas a man can say Shelo asani isha. Seems like that. But Rav Kook explains deeply that that's not the meaning of the bracha there. The bracha means Hasani kirtzono. I was created by the will of Hashem, meaning in me naturally is the will of Hashem. My will naturally is what Hashem wants. Whereas a man is sort of jealous. Shelo asani isha means, in a way, it's a much better creation to be a woman from the spiritual point of view. After all, he's thanking Hashem for not being a woman just because to fulfill and exercise the mitzvot aseh shazman grama and be more on the doing side of the Torah, not by nature of creation. That's the man. That's the uniqueness of a man. That's Shelo asani isha. That after all, we men do all the Torah learning, or are obligated. The mitzvah is on men to learn Torah and to enhance the Torah and teach Torah. And then there's all the mitzvot and grama that men are always involved with: tefillin, tzitzis, sukkah, lulav. All those mitzvahs that always show Hashem outwardly in the world. That's the men's mission. That's our mission. That's our goal. So, but still, there's something very, very unique and deep in women that we men lack. We need those reminders. We need those extra deeds and actions to always keep us en route and always keep us connected to Hashem. So, and also, by the way, this may be the reason that tefillah is dafka more the women's nature. Prayer. We learn all of Hilchos Tefillah from Chana. Many of Hilchos Tefillah learn from Chana. So, and we see in general that women are more inclined to pray full-heartedly. It comes from their heart, all their emotions. That's Tefillah. So it's not only because Tefillah in general is a more emotional act, like we learn from the Torah. that tefillah is where our heart needs to be, our kavana, our internal being has to come out. So for women, it's easier, but not only because of that, because they're more, they have a stronger emotional side in them. Not only because of that, spiritually, tefillah is the strongest connection with Hashem. That's when we speak to Hashem, converse with Hashem. And since women are naturally connected to Hashem, the conversation works better. There's nothing blocking that interaction, that relationship with Hashem like men have. Because men have to, first of all, scrape off the layers that are not connected to Hashem, that are external, that are materialistical more. Whereas women have this direct, from within them, they have this direct connection. Because naturally, they're more spiritual or created by Hashem's will. That's why tefillah works better for them also. So all these points show this idea. So going back to Hashem, conversing with Avram and not with Sarah and all together, not with all the female prophets, it could be to understand what does this mean that Hashem speaks to someone. What does that mean? Is that only to relay messages? If that was the point, then it's enough in a dream to get the message, to see the vision, imagination of all kinds of things that Hashem brings a person, Ruach HaKodesh, and that's enough. What's the idea of actual speech, word for word, to tell exactly, directly what I mean and what to do and what not to do and what's going to happen and what's not going to happen and all that. So I thought this is something that came up in mind to check if it's a true point here. I thought that maybe direct speech is to straighten the person Hashem is speaking to. It makes him who he is. Besides giving the relation to the message, the content, it's much more than that. If Hashem is speaking to someone, he becomes now straight and in line with Hashem. If you're speaking to someone, even between man to man, then there's this type of influence of one over the other when they're conversing with one another. The inner personality comes out in speech, and that itself changes the person if he knows how to listen.
Right, a face-to-face meeting is always more effective.
More effective, exactly.
A memo is one thing. The boss comes in and sits down opposite you and says.
Exactly. That's a very good mashal. I didn't think of that comparison. Exactly. Face-to-face is always much more influential, much more touching. So if we said before that men, as a man, wasn't created as spiritual and as in line with Hashem as women, he needs that speech in order to straighten him out. Man needs that in order to make him the person that is connected to Hashem very strongly. Whereas women, they didn't need the direct speech to be influenced and to straighten out by Hashem speaking to them directly, because they're anyway there. So for them, it's enough to send a memo. For them, it's enough to SMS or WhatsApp them. Their connection is so straight and strong and natural that there's no need for direct speech.
A nice theoretical board, but if you speak to 100 women, 95 of them will disagree with that. So then there's something about it.
We disagree with what? With what point? That they're more spiritual to begin with?
Judaism instructed that they're on a higher spiritual level, and that the way Yom Yomi is, that I teach you, they need less stuff because you're so much closer to Hashem by your very nature.
So with that, they disagree? With that, they would disagree?
95 out of 100. But they would tell you that.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I disagree with that. Because you want to say something, Harley? I'll tell you why I disagree. Because that was my next point to say, a few more lines about this. We're living in a world, culture, the culture of the world now, this generation, and ever since the women's rights and lib came out, is a external world. We're living in a very external world. What counts is what's public. He didn't publicize, he didn't do, which is a very external and I would say fake world. A world that only if you're famous and everyone knows what you're doing, then you've done it. But Torah and spirituality is a totally different world. It's a world that the major part of it is hidden. It's what we call in the more positive understanding of this phrase of Sgulat Torah. Not talking about Sgula today. It's the day of Rachel. She was Niftar today, Yud Aleph Mar Cheshvan. So there are those who take red ribbons from Kever Rachel and they put it around their wrist for good luck, the good luck charm. Not talking about that type of Sgula. I'm talking about the Torah and the mitzvos work on this world and change the world on a spiritual level, that when we're doing something here, right here in Ol Ari in Ra'anana, learning Torah right now, that has influence over the entire world, makes the world pure, more pure. No one knows we're here now, except for those on Zoom. It's not those who will get the recording afterwards and listen to it. Yeah, I guess. Right. It was ever eavesdropping. But it's not, it's a whole different concept of what we're meant to be living upon. And because the world is so external and it only what you do counts, then they have this feeling. It's chaval. It's a negative.
The Rav is right, and the Rav is speaking metaphysical, and the Rav, you're right.
Right.
You're right, but the metaphysical is not the reality in the Shetta.
Not the reality, the way we perceive reality.
That is reality. That is perception.
No,
because all that counts.
Because
Perception is all that counts.
No. Reality. That's what Torah tells us. There is a realistical, metaphysical world. Realistical. It's there. It's stronger, and it's more sure, and it's more. It influences more, and it changes the world more, much more than what we see realistically with our external eyes. What's that?
You can't take it to the Makola.
Right. That's true. But who says that's the only thing that counts? Who says that's what we're supposed to, how we're supposed to evaluate our life and our deeds? Right. That's the point. And we had to restructure, at least within the Jewish world, restructure the way we perceive things. And not be influenced by Western culture that doesn't see this metaphysical, realistical world existing.
In the frum world where somebody wants to be frummer than whatever that means.
Yes.
The one guy in the shul who decides putting his toss over his head the whole time. I'm just.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
He's frummer. He's going to show. Like you said it. Look at what I'm doing publicly. It's good, right?
Yeah. So it depends, again, also depends his intention. Right. Sometimes he has a very pure intention. And by the way, your point is very true. Halachically, the Mishnah Berurah says that if only one person puts his house over his head, for at least for the parts that you don't really need to. The parts you really need to, I guess he should be doing it anyhow, but even that maybe not. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that's Yuara. You have to look around, and if you're the only one, then remove it. Because of that, exactly. Not to present yourself as someone better than all the rest. It makes you boastful. It makes you look like you're boastful, like you're Baal Gaiva. So you're right. That's a point, halacha even. But you're right. Even in the frum world, that's what Yeshayahu Navi speaks about or yells about very much, rebukes the Jewish people then. Until today, it's true that they fulfill the mitzvot anashim elumata, just out of routine, not deep inside in the, not feeling the messages of the Torah mitzvah. They're just doing it because they were told to, because that's their routine, and that's it, not deep inside. And Hashem says through Yeshayahu Navi, that's not what I'm looking for. I don't need mitzvah and milumada. And that's what has developed because we're living a very external world, a world of jealousy, of competition. Thank you. Competition, always looking who's better and who's greater, and trying to outdo the others. Exactly. It's almost built in now because the world for 150 years has been living in such a style of life, and we want to cling on to the true Torah and see that the proper view is that if you're doing the right thing, if you're doing what Hashem wants you to do, then you're on top of the world. No matter how many people know about you, no matter how famous you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter how you present yourself with all your belongings and your level of in business or in the external world. You're in the right thing, then you're in a very high level. The Gemara Baba Batra, the feud says that he was Rav Yosef, who went into a coma. He almost died. And then he came back to life, and they asked him, what did you see up in heaven? Right? He says, Elyonim lemata v'tachtonim lemala. Up in heaven, I saw that it's all the opposite. That whoever was considered in this world, the Olam Hazeh, as top of the world and the most famous and most successful and everything, up in heaven, he's all the way in the bottom. Very scary. And those who are considered in this world as simple people, nothing to speak about, nothing to talk about, no one cares about them. In the next world, they're up on top. Very powerful message. Very powerful message. Very scary one. And then the Amoraim there ask him, Ve'anan mai? How about the Talmidei Chachamim, who in this world already live a spiritual life, a true spiritual life? So he says, lemata kach lemala. Then it's the same. It's a mirror image. Yeah.
What's interesting also,
yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you're blind.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's interesting that someone that's blind with no sense of sight.
Right, Dafka, that explains it.
Right.
He sees the spiritual world much more than he sees the outer or the external world. Right. Exactly.
Right. Huh?
Exactly. That makes sense.
It was a very pure version.
Exactly.
Huh?
Exactly. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah. Anyway, so if this is the interpretation and understanding of the speech, direct speech from Hashem to men, and not finding it to females, that's maybe the understanding. They don't need a straightening of Hashem speaking to them directly, whereas men do need that. Straighten them out.
When we say
Yeah.
we're not saying thank you for that, we're just recognizing it to stay in. You can't thank the Kadosh Baruch Hu for not.
I wouldn't compare the Goy and the Eved to the Isha.
Okay,
I wouldn't compare the two of them to the Isha. Goy and Eved is to actually thank Hashem because after all, it's a different life. It's a different world to be a Jew and versus a non-Jew, or to be a servant, a slave. But by women, you're right. So it's acknowledging the fact that we have a different mission. It's two separate missions, not comparing and not going above or below. Two separate missions. They do theirs, we do ours. And each one has their role in life, and no one's better than the other, right? Which is another huge misconception in our modern world, right? To compare men to women, actually, like again, to realistically see the world with externally, the way people do things, what they do. And if a man can do this, then a woman can also. What's the point?
Anybody who's raised a son and a daughter knows whatever you wish for one, you wish for the other. But if you think they're the same,
right? Exactly. They should succeed in bringing to the open what they are, who they are. That's what you need. And if women have type of occupations that are more female type, and they have their, again, natural personality that makes them more connected, and they're better, more successful at certain occupations, and men have different, it doesn't mean they're better or worse. They're bringing out to the open their potential, the best ways possible. Okay. This also connects to the whole idea about Lot and being the son of Haran and everything being uncertain, whereas Avraham Avinu was very certain about his life. It goes on and on, this idea, but we won't go into that. We'll have time to go to our Shemitah issues. Okay. So we said last time that finally we'll come to discuss our actual kitchen with the Shemitah produce and how does Shemitah have influence over our kitchen. So firstly, the holiness of the fruit and vegetables that grow on Shemitah year depend on, as I think we've said this, depend on what date we're in. Meaning, for fruits, it depends on when they sprouted, when they first, just the very beginning of the sprouting of the fruit, the very beginning stage. When was that? Before Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah or after Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah? If it was before, no Kedusha Shvis to that fruit because it all goes by the moment of sprouting. So it's called a Gidulei Shishit. We find that in the grocery stores now. We still have fruits that sprouted in the 6th year, Tafshin Peyal, before Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah, and there's no Kedusha Shvit for that. Therefore, it's not hefker if it grows in our gardens or in fields, and there's no kedusha in the fruit itself. There's no holiness bearing in the fruit itself, so we can treat it like any other year. Nothing special about that. Whereas by vegetables, we go by the picking of it. When did we pick the vegetable from the ground? If we picked it after Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah, of Tafshin Pei Bet, then it bears holiness in it. If we picked it before, no holiness in it. That's how it works between that and that. There are the grains, the 5 grains, wheat, barley, and so on. We go by shlish gidul, that if it grew 3rd way, shishit, the year before Rosh Hashanah Shemitah, then there's no Kedusha Shvit in it. If it hadn't yet gone 3rd way of growth before the Rosh Hashanah, and it finished and it completed the 3rd way, up to being a 3rd grown after Rosh Hashanah, then it has Kedusha Shvit. Those are the 3 different times that we speak about in order to decide if there's Kedusha Shvit in the produce or not. Now, what type of use can we do with holy fruits or vegetables according to these different timetables? When they are holy, what kind of use are we allowed to do with them? What kind can we not do with them? Firstly, buying them, purchasing them is already an issue because it says, "Vayita Shabbat haaretz lachem leochla velo lischora." I'll learn that from this. The deoraita, when Shemitah become deoraita, it's a deoraita prohibition not to sell normally as regular merchandise in the marketplace, not to sell and buy fruits and vegetables that are holy Kedusha Shvit. At least the selling is the problem. The buying is the buyer is helping the seller to do the prohibition, do the sin. That's why you mustn't buy from him normally. So before we go into how do we actually purchase Kedusha Shvit fruits and vegetables, but before that, to explain that if someone does purchase normally, if he does buy pays money to get holy fruits or vegetables, the money becomes holy. Yovel hi kodesh tieh lachem, mahi kodesh avdamei kodesh. I'll learn that from the Yovel, and the Yovel is compared, the Shemitah is compared to Yovel, that the damim, the money that you use to pay for the holy fruits and vegetables also becomes holy. In what sense? What does that mean? To put that money in a safe and never use it? It's holy money? No. It means that you can only buy with that money food which then be eaten in holiness. You cannot buy objects that will just stay around in the house forever. That's the food that would be consumed, and the eating and drinking of that food has to be done like holy fruits and vegetables. Because what happens is the original Shemitah produce remains holy no matter what. It's not like Hekdesh, where the holiness gets exchanged onto the money, and the actual Hekdesh becomes non-holy. It's not that way. By Shvit, the fruits and vegetables remain holy forever. Those that grew from the ground with Shemitah holiness in them, those remain holy forever. The money that you pay in order to purchase becomes holy itself. That money can only buy food, and then that food becomes holy, but the money becomes non-holy already. After you bought food with that money, the money is now regular money, non-holy money. And that food, if you exchange it for a different type of food, or someone pays for that, then it's always the last online that's holy. So the food you exchanged for that food that you had bought with that money that was holy, the last food that was exchanged for becomes holy, and the food that you exchanged it for becomes non-holy. So it always is the last online and the first. The first remains holy no matter what, and the last online. Okay, so that's how it bears holiness. So how do we buy fruits and vegetables if it's leochla velo yischora? So there are two ideas that we have to understand here. Firstly, what bears holiness of Shvit, besides the timetable that we spoke before? At what point of the year did it grow and got picked from the ground? It also has to do with who is the owner, Goy or a Jew. And we spoke about this. If a Jew owns the land, the produce, and obviously it has the holiness in it. If a non-Jew owns the land, namely Heter Mechira, by the Heter Mechira we sell many of the fields that grow produce in Eretz Yisrael. We sell them before the chief rabbin of Israel, before Shemitah, had sold all those lands to a Goy. Similar to Mechiras Chametz, we sell all the Chametz of the country to a Goy. So the moment a Goy owns the land, and now everything grows from the land that's owned by a Goy, it's a huge dispute between the Bet Yosef and the Mabit, whether the land still bears holiness in it, even though it's owned by a non-Jew. The Mabit held that it does, and koach benochi lafkia b'shat haaretz. There's no power, no strength that the nochi, the Goy, can eliminate or disregard take away the holiness of the ground. The ground remains holy no matter what, even if it's owned by a non-Jew. Whereas the Bet Yosef argued and said, no, yesh kinyan legoy lafkia mikdushat haaretz. The moment the Goy bought the land, it cancels, takes away, it removes the holiness of the land. It's owned by God. Yeah, by the way, very, very important, Pe'at HaShulchan. Pe'at HaShulchan, or no, even before him, Pe'at HaShulchan is a student of the Gra, Rabbi Yisrael Mishiklov, no, much beforehand, the Kaftor Vaferach, Rav Ashtori Aparchi. Rav Ashtori Aparchi, Kaftor Vaferach, was, I believe, in the very beginning of the Achronim, even maybe the Rishonim period, and end of the Rishonim period.
Before Shulchan or after? Before Rav Karo or after Rav Karo?
I believe it's approximately that time. I believe so. I have to check it to make sure. But the Kaftor Vaferach, he makes a distinction which is very, very, very important. He says this huge distinction between the holiness of the land, bearing holiness with regards to mitzvos atluyos ba'aretz, all these types of mitzvos that are connected to the ground, to the soil that grows from the produce of the soil that becomes holy, and then it has all kinds of mitzvot that pertain to the produce, versus the holiness of the ground pertaining to mitzvat Yeshuv Eretz Yisrael. It's two different things. If a person lives on a land owned by a non-Jew in Israel, in the borders of Parshas Maseh, and by the way, even though vast parts of the borders of Parshas Maseh, which really belong to us, are now different countries, Lebanon and Syria and maybe parts of Jordan, if you really take the larger parts, the larger definition of Eretz Yisrael, Kenik, Niziv, Kadmoni, which were promised to Abraham. Even Iraq, maybe.
The Euphrates River.
Okay, the Prat. Yeah. It's by Turkey more, but it's even all the way to Iraq. Maybe, whatever. It can be extended, the more the better. But so a person living in all those borders, no matter if it's owned by us or if it's conquered by us, we didn't even conquer the land yet. Mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael has nothing to do with ownership or with conquering. You're fulfilling the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael just by the mere fact that you're living on the promised land. So that's a very important distinction that he makes. So we're not losing that mitzvah by the fact that we're selling the land to a goy for Shemittah purposes, so that it cancels the holiness of the land from being Shemittah produce, but it still doesn't mean that we're not fulfilling mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. It's not like living in the Chutz Haaretz. Living in the Chutz Haaretz is Chutz Haaretz. It's not no mitzvah, no holiness in the soil. Here there is. That can never be taken away, no matter what. It's a very important distinction. Anyhow, so when we're...
It wouldn't be, it's not halacha l'masa. I mean, Jews were living in Tyre or Sidon 50 years ago.
Yeah.
They always kept 2 days Yom Tov.
That's true. That's true, but that's...
Being like Hayim, what the Rav is saying, this is Yeshuv Eretz Yisrael.
Right. But that's, again, a different type of halacha that has nothing to do with the mitzvah Eretz Yisrael point of view. That has to do with how long it took the Eidim, witnesses, to get to the far away sections of Eretz Yisrael. We say Chutz Haaretz, but it's not.
I know around that.
I know.
Stop for a second. You didn't want to say that.
Yeah, right. You're right, but you're right, but it's not the proper term. We call it Chutz Haaretz because that's the way to define. We're not going to start saying the parts of Eretz Yisrael that are far away that it took more than 2 weeks for witnesses to get to, they had to keep 2 days. Right? It had nothing to do with Chutz Haaretz. It's a very it's a technicality, totally technical.
Yeah. Don't joke. Lubavitch, it's a very big shiloh.
It's a very big shiloh. Not only Lubavitch, Shlomo Zalman also had a big issue with that too. Yeah. Shlomo Zalman, he doesn't go all the way there, but he's very uncertain if a person living there is Mekayim Mitzvah Eretz Yisrael. He's very uncertain of Shlomo Zalman. Because he says it's definitely out of the borders. Even the Kaftor of Ferach doesn't help in this case. It is definitely out of the borders of Masei. El Arish is approximately the most southern part of Eretz Yisrael, and it's definitely way beyond that. So we don't have Yeshiva Eretz Yisrael. So what makes it part of the promised land? What way is it living? Why would we consider living in Israel? The only reason is because we conquered it. Kibush. But who says that's enough in our days to conquer? There's no Beit, no Sanhedrin, no Melech, no prophet that can add parts to Eretz Yisrael. There are ways to add. There are ways to add, but it has to be done properly and not just by conquering, by tzal conquering.
Or Shlomo Zalman says when Elad is mentioned, Malachim with Shlomo Melech and the ships, he thinks it's a different Elad?
Yeah, there it says Eilot, if I believe it correctly, but it's the same idea, yeah. Meilot to Metzion Gaver.
According to him, it's just pure, it sounds the same, it's not the same city?
No, it could be, if I believe correctly, it says there that they had left, they had gone through there to, that's where Shlomo Melech says.
They got destroyed on some business venture. He built ships and the ships never took off for whatever reason.
Right, there's something about that, right. So it may not mean, I'm not into it now, but it may not mean that it was meant living in Eretz Yisrael. It's just the way out of Eretz Yisrael. Do their merchandise with ships that docked by Eilat, docked by the Red Sea. Could be, they're not necessarily that you live there, you just went out in order to do your business. So it's a very, very problematic situation there in Eilat. It's rare that people really adhere to this. Yeah, everything, Hanukkah programs, Pesach programs, and all the ultra. There are yeshivas there and all the ultra-religious from any type, the Tilumi world.
And somebody says, like, here's the full million, here's the Eretz Yisrael. Maybe you don't have that.
No, right. So I'm saying no one keeps to these Piskei Halacha, even to the fact that it may not be Eretz Yisrael from the point of view of Eretz Yisrael. Even that people don't keep to, as far as I'm aware.
Well, your Talmidim just
Right. Kantorovich family, right? No, I'm saying everyone regards it as Eretz Yisrael. I haven't heard anyone, definitely not 2 days Yom Tov, maybe Chabad, I don't know, but I never heard of that. Wow.
Just in Eilat.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, it's anywhere beyond El Arish, but it's not a settled land until you get to Eilat. It's really settled city there. Anyway, that took us off a little bit, but back to our discussion. So we spoke about the Bet Yosef versus the Mabit. If you sell the land to a goy, does that remove the holiness of the land or not? Most poskim rely on the Bet Yosef that it does remove the holiness. So if you buy Heter Mechira produce or Yavul Nochri, which is Arab grown in Israel, you don't need to keep Kedusha Shvi'is in all you buy. Based on the Bet Yosef, it's not considered holy. You can get rid of it any way you'd like, or do with it whatever you'd like. No, it goes together.
Yeah, it doesn't because it's regular.
No, it's no longer hefker.
For Shemittah, but it's not Shemittah.
Right. So from the point of view of hefker, it's not hefker. Right. The whole idea of no Tumas Masos for Shemittah, why isn't there no Tumas Masos for Shemittah? Because it's hefker. That's the reason. The Tumas Masos, the Torah says, is in order to give the Kohanim, Levim, poor people a portion of what you grew. Now that it's hefker, everyone can take on their own. Why would I need to give it to them? So that's why there's no Tumas Masos. Here it's not hefker. But from the other point of view, the moment the guy has the strength, when he buys a land, he has the strength to cancel the holiness of the ground. So it's no longer Shmita, but it's also no longer Tumos Masros. He canceled the holiness of the ground. So it's not holy produce that deserves, that requires Tumos Masros either. It should be the same. As far as I could tell, not because of Shemitah, again, because what?
They sell the land.
They sell the land, but not because of Shemitah they don't take it to Masras, but because it's sold to a goy and the goy. Right, because it's a mechira, right? Exactly, because of the mechira of the land, right?
This year, if you're a Rabbanut Mashkiach, you're almost on vacation. I assume a big part of their job is doing Chumas and Mashros. No, they don't check.
Yeah.
From all the before Rami Levi, before super.
Yeah, sure. They do a lot of work.
It's all done.
So I'll tell you, the Chazanish and some of his followers hold like the Mabit. There is Tushat Shvit there is Kedushat Haaretz in what you sell to a goy. It doesn't get canceled. So according to them, on one hand, you need to hold the holiness of Shvit even by Heter Mechira produce. You can't get rid of it any way you'd like. You can do it or whatever you'd like. You have to do it.
They don't believe in it.
Not because they don't believe in the Heter Mechira. Let's say the Mechira worked, but the goy doesn't have the strength to cancel the holiness of the ground. It's like the Mabit. That's besides not believing in the actual Mechira. That's like Yivul Nochri, okay? Yivul Nochri is that the guy owns the land to begin with. It's Arab land, Arab territory. And they grow things from the ground in their territory. According to the Chazonish, he holds like the Mabit, that bears holiness and you need to keep it like Shemitah produce. Like the Otzar Beitin that we buy.
It's Kedushat regardless of who the owner is.
Exactly. That's the Chazonish's opinion. And that's how they hold for all the Nochri produce. They keep it like Kedushat Shvit. Now, but according to them, since it's not hefker, the goy or the farmer who sold his land to a goy, like by Heter Mechira, they lock everything in. That's the whole idea. That since it's not owned by a Jew, then we can grow everything as usual. We can lock everything, and it's all like as if it's non-Shmita. So even though according to the Chazon Ish it is Shmita, because the Goy doesn't have the power to remove and cancel the holiness, so had to keep Shmita to the produce. But on the other hand, it will need Tomos Umasras, because it's not Hefker, because they guard the land. He said the whole reason Shemitah produce does not need to be taken, you don't need to take Tomos Umasras out of it, is because it's free for all. Anyone can take, but here it's not true. They guard the land. So you have these different types of combinations between Shemitah and Tomos Umasras and how to deal with all that. Anyhow, so the moment we do take in Shemitah produce, so I said most poskim disagree with the Chazon Ish and they go by the B'tz Yosef, so that the Nochri and the Heter Mechira produce does not hold Shemitah in it. You can use it any way you'd like and get rid of it and throw it away in the garbage normally, no Shemitah at all in it. Chazon Ish and Bnei Brak, they hold more like him. But when we buy Otzar Aretz, which is the produce that comes from Jewish land, and it's not sold to a goy, the way they work the land, the farmers themselves, firstly, they don't do any Doraita prohibitions of Shemitah in their land. Even the rabbinic, better if they do it by a non-Jew to work for them this year. Anyway, a lot of the work that's done every year is done by non-Jews. The way it's distributed and sold, which is the main issue, because we just said before, you cannot sell Shemitah produce. So how is it in the shops? And we buy it like normal, like usual, with money and everything. So the answer is, we're not buying the actual fruit or vegetable that's holy. We're paying for the effort that the farmers and the distributors went through. They deserve money for the effort and not for the fruit itself. We're not buying the fruit per se. We're paying for the effort. That's how it's done. It seems a little bit harama. It's like sneaking, underlying the halacha, but it's many times
we have a great tradition of that.
Yeah, right. In all kinds of areas in Torah, we find that. Yeah.
Those kids you pay to work youth Shabbos is for you, but you can't work on Shabbos and you can't get paid. But we'll figure it out.
Yeah, right. Oh, so here also I have a similar concept here. We also do havla'ah. Another idea is that when we buy, we don't buy only that fruit or vegetable that's Kedushat Shvit. We buy other products from the store, which are not at all Kedushat Shvit, whether it may be fruits and vegetables that don't bear Kedushat Shvit, like Chutzart, Nochri, Shishit, Aravat Romit, Aravat Tzfuyit, according to some, all those types of fruits that don't bear Kedushat Shvit. We buy them along with other fruits that do bear Kedushat Shvit.
You need to do that at the same time?
Preferably that you do that, yes. Preferably you do that in order to use another heter, another leniency here, which is what you spoke about when we pay the youth to work on Shabbos. That's called havla'ah. Havla'ah means that you're paying really for all the other products that don't bear Kedushat Shvit in them.
Swallowed up.
And it's swallowed up. It's as if he's giving you as a gift those fruits that do bear Kedushat Shvit. Yeah. It's very, very difficult to accept because we weigh. It's also should have led us not to weigh the stuff that we take, because when we weigh, we're paying exactly per gram of every fruit.
Out per gram of every apple.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so they say you pay more money for larger amounts of fruits, which go by the weight, because there's more effort put into the larger amount you take, the more effort is put into to pick it from the tree and to distribute it in the trucks and everything else. Lift the loads, lift the crates and everything. So that's how it's done. And one more point of the Otzar Beit Din is the fact that the people in charge of distribution are not the farmers themselves, but it's companies, or like acting like a Beit Din, like Otzar Haaretz. That's the name of a company. And some Haredi organizations also have Otzar Haaretz with them, that they receive all the produce and distribute it all around the country, which is really like giving it out to the population, like Hefker. Hefker is that we allow anyone to take from it.
Hefker with the service charge.
And here there's a service charge, exactly. They're servicing us so that we don't have to go out to the fields and collect it. They're bringing it to us. But it takes them a lot of work and effort and service to bring it to us. So we pay them for that. That's what we're paying for, not for the actual food. That's why you call that the distribution and not the fruit itself. Yeah, there's big questions on this because besides the weighing, when we speak about, let's say, different quality of fruits, what does that have to do with the amount of effort that was put into it? Why are we paying more for better quality? That would mean that we're paying per se for the fruit itself and not for the effort. Not only the expenses around it.
Fancy etrog.
Exactly, the fancy etrog, how are you paying more for that, right? Or the better, the same fruit, but the better looks of it, the better shape of it, the better.
Next year, how will they rationalize that? Charging 500 shekels for an etrog? How do they rationalize that?
Right.
Market.
It has to be something you actually smoke a lot.
Yeah.
It has to be something.
Right. No, it could be that there's still some effort, especially by etrogim, it's more accountable for, because they have those rabbis who look over, inspect every etrog, and they separate them into different groups. How do you know when you buy a 60 shekel etrog or an 80 shekel etrog or 100 shekel etrog, that one is better than the other because some rabbi sat down.
I just trust the 10-year-old kid who's selling it.
Yeah. By the way, 10-year-old kids shouldn't buy from, because a kid under 13 doesn't have the strength. He doesn't have the strength, the ability to sell. You can only buy, acquire, but not sell. Halachically speaking.
I'm assuming
10-year-old kids don't own it.
I'm assuming somebody, right? There's
No, but it doesn't matter. He doesn't have the ability. He doesn't have shlichut either. He doesn't have the ability to be a shaliach and the ability to sell you. It has to be above 13. Otherwise, it's as if you're borrowing it and not actually owning it. Yeah.
When you give the 100
I always ask.
to a kid, 5 seconds later, he gives it to the balabayit.
You assume.
Yeah, but the person.
He's working in the booth. He's working in the whatever. He's giving it to the.
Like if you go buy
No, not always. Not always the Balabayit is in the booth. Not at all. Many times you have just the kids in the booth and the Balabayit is somewhere else.
An hour later, 2 hours later, not 5 seconds.
It doesn't matter. The person who handed it to you doesn't have the strength to make you an owner of it. He doesn't have the strength to be the shaliach of the owner either. He doesn't have the halachic ability to do that.
But for all we know, all those kids selling together. I mean, there's one guy bringing it all in. He puts all these booths and puts kids there. That would be okay. If this was like, because if you go into a store, if I go into a store and a child sells me, like if I go into it and I buy from a store, I know the kid's not the balabait at the store.
Right, I think he's saying specifically for an etrog, there's a halacha that you have to.
So I've been borrowing etrogs for a long time.
Yeah. No, hopefully they're above 13. I didn't know they were. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was at the shuk the last day. So many kids attacked me.
Yeah.
They went down in the last 20 minutes. I was there.
But you were looking for a bargain.
No,
Yeah.
my son, I didn't think my son was getting out from the army. I didn't buy him a set.
That's what happened.
That's
Last
what happened.
last moment he got out.
I bought for my other son, but I didn't get this.
Because I heard guys saying, how
It went from 40 shekels, Rabbi, to 10 shekels.
Yeah, but that's smart.
That's the market.
Yeah.
12.35 and 5 to 1 when they close at 1 o'clock.
Wow.
You can buy a set for 10 shekels at 5
A
to 1.
set. Wow.
Ah.
Yeah, but the problem is you're left with the
You'd be surprised
last
how
thing.
many guys were in
The Hadrin?
shop.
Yeah.
There were some big players there with lots and
Well,
lots.
it's a guessing game for them. I mean, I don't know exactly.
Right. How much does it sell? Right. No, but people go through so much the days before that they take the best ones usually, and then you're left with the. Yeah, that's the risk. Okay. Anyhow, so finally, now that we have the holy produce in the house, what can we do with it and what not? So the rules are as follows. Firstly, what categorically can you do with Dushat Shvit produce? Only what is similar to eating, which is Hanato uviuro shave, that the benefiting of it, Hanato, when you benefit from it, at that moment, you're also demolishing it. Like food, when you eat something, you're enjoying as you're chewing and swallowing, and at the same time, you're demolishing it in the world. It's no longer existing. That's called anato uvi uro shave. Same moment, you're enjoying it, you're benefiting, and it disappears from the world. Those are the only type uses you can use produce that's holy produce. What does that exclude? What can't you do with holy produce? So the Gemara gives a few examples. One of them is lehasaka. If you want to use it today, nowadays, it's not relevant anymore, but for a stove, meaning for coals, medicinal also, right? Medicinal also, but also for cooking and baking. So you want to use, now, if it's actually wood, that like branches or wood from the trunk of the tree, that doesn't have Dushat to begin with. It's not holy.
Burn in the stove, use as fuel. That's not allowed, or that is allowed?
Not allowed.
To use what? No, to use, let's say, the tree itself, you are allowed.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't have holiness in it to begin with. But to use produce that is holy, Dushat Shvit, if you would use, I don't know, why would you do such a thing, actually? To take fruits and put them in the fireplace in order to, now, if it's for heating, like a furnace to heat the room, then that's okay. Because you're benefiting at the same moment that it gets destroyed, that it gets demolished from the world. So that's okay. But if you're using it for cooking or baking, that's not at the same moment. When are you going to benefit from it? After it's a long time already destroyed, because it's burnt already, burnt to coals. The coals are what you cook on, bake on, and you only enjoy it when you start eating the food.
You generate the heat and the warmth, you benefit immediately.
Exactly. In the warmth of warming the house, you benefit immediately as it's burning. Whereas here, it got all burnt, all demolished, all destroyed, no longer existent in the world, and only then you start benefiting later on by it cooking, the whole process of cooking, and eating it. You actually eat it. Same is true for medicinal produce. You cannot make medicines out of Dushat Shvit produce, because the medicine destroyed the fruit or vegetable that you used for making the medicine, and you only benefit from it when you actually swallow the medicine. Cures you. It's also much later. The hanato achal biuro. The benefit comes way later, after you've demolished it, after you've destroyed it. So that's not allowed. Another example that's not allowed, likvisa lemishra. You want to do laundry using the chemicals or whatever, the detergents that come from holy fruits or vegetables, and use that, crush them and dissolve them into water and soap and all that, helps to make your laundry. That's also not allowed, because again, it's going to waste. It's destroyed before you benefit. When are you going to benefit from it? When the clothes is actually clean and you wear the clothes. Wearing the clean clothes, or at least becoming clean. But that's after the fact that it got dissolved and ruined in the soap and water that made it possible to do your laundry in it. So the moment it's a stage after, or a few stages after the demolishing, the ruining of the produce, they're not allowed to do all these things. So it has that's the first thing you have to think of, to make sure that you're only using it. Today, nowadays, we don't use holy produce of Shemitah for all these type of things. Not to make medicine, and not maybe the non-conventional medicine. Still use planetary items to make crush them and make them medicine. No, but tea would be okay. Tea would be okay because when you just grind the tea leaves, that doesn't make them bad, disappear, ruined, demolished. That remains very good. Now, when are you going to use it to drink? And the drinking is benefiting and demolishing at the same moment, so it's okay. Right? That's okay to do, right? So, and laundry, you don't do all laundry either with such produce. Using it for as coals to cook or bake on that either. So in nowadays, all these different types of actions aren't so relevant, but that's the idea.
Making fabric or clothing for certain plants, like linen or something, so you wouldn't be able to use Shemittah linen for clothing.
Or cotton, but that to begin with doesn't have Kedushat Shvit in it. Because what bears Kedushat Shvit in it? Only something that anatov Yeroshavah. That same concept of what can you do with kosher, with holy Shemitah produce, that same concept also gives it its holiness, regards it as holy.
You had a field of cotton that wouldn't be holy because people don't eat cotton.
Exactly.
It has to be something people eat.
And they don't use it, not necessarily eating, anything like eating, which is any use that's hanatov Yeroshavah. That benefiting and demolishing at the same moment. Since cotton is not used that way, because it's used to make fabric, and fabric is done by ruining the cotton when you process it, and in the end, you wear the clothes. So since it's done in a way that's not on a Tov Shaveh, it doesn't receive holiness to begin with. It's holy to begin with. You can make the garment then. So it's very rare nowadays to have this issue actually.
If you're a cotton, I don't even know if they have this in Israel, but if you're a cotton farmer in Israel,
yes,
you don't have to. You can water the fields normally.
No. Very important point you brought up here as well. These are two totally separate concepts. There is a concept of what can or cannot be done with the produce of Shemitah, whether it's holy or not, and if it's holy, what can you do with it? Those are the ideas we spoke about today. And there's the working of the land. The Shavta Aret Shabbat LaHashem is totally unrelated to the produce that comes out. You can't work the land for anything. Even if it's to grow weeds, we have no use of it in the world. Yeah. If that requires any work in the land, you're not allowed to do it. Because the land, that's, by the way, a very important difference, which I find puzzling in a book that was written in compiling halachos from Shlomo Zalman on Shemitah called Shulchan Shlomo. It's not direct quotes from his books. It's just compiling from all different books, essays, articles that he wrote and shiurim that he gave about Shemitah. But the language used in that book, I can't accept it. I think it's incorrect. They say there that flowers, when do flowers bear Kedushat Shvit in them? Only if they're good fragrance. There's a good fragrance coming from the flower, only then it bears Kedushat Shvit, because that's called an Atov Yeroshaveh. But if it's just for the beauty, like normal, that's what you usually buy flowers just for the beauty, there's no Kedushat Shvit in those flowers. Yes. Those you can throw in the garbage whenever you want, even if they're totally good now. No Kedushat Shvit whatsoever. Doesn't matter how you get rid of them or what you do with them. But you can crush them, do whatever you want. But that doesn't mean that a farmer growing flowers can do all the work to grow flowers. Definitely not. He's not allowed to do anything. Plant seeds and grow flowers. No, Edom Mechir is a totally different ballgame. Right. No, that solves everything if you hold. Yeah, by the goy, so he's
Does Ours have flowers? They deal with that? They don't deal with that. Otzer I'm a chazan. I keep Otzer I want to buy my wife flowers for Shabbos. What do I do?
Yeah. I don't think they have such stores about flowers for flowers.
So most people that are very strict with Otzer they will not buy
They will not flowers. Right.
Imported.
Or imported, right? Imported. Imported is the best way. You ask in the shop, where's the flowers that are imported, and that's fine. Get hussards.
I think, my friend, I think we do more export than import flowers. We do export. I don't think we import flowers. We export flowers.
I mean,
Huh?
I don't know, but that would be a solution.
Right, that would be a solution.
I think we export.
I'm not sure. I think from Holland, they're very, very professional flower growers in Holland.
We're famous for tulip.
Yeah. I don't know. You have to check that, but exactly. Imported flowers are totally fine. By the way, even Heter Mechira is not at all simple because we said Heter Mechira, we don't allow Doraita. We're allowed to Rabbanan.
We don't allow the right.
Right. And here, flowers you need to plant. They're not everlasting for a whole year.
Unless you say they only have herbs.
Still. Even Arabs for Nisa Doraita won't help. What can be done, is under a roof. As we said, under a roof, it's considered a house. We spoke about that a while back, like pots and plants in our house. And then under a roof with mechitzot, according to the Chazon Ish, maybe, meaning now a greenhouse is not necessarily considered a roof. That's another whole dispute because it's normally done that way. It's not abnormal to grow in a greenhouse. That's how it's done all 6 years, all of the years. So some say it's not. Shlomo Zalman is lenient. He said, yes, even that's considered under roof, and it's okay to work the land in such a case.
And if it's hydroponic.
Yeah, hydroponic is perfect also. That's another solution. Hydroponic, under a roof, or import. But for the Deoraita, you can't even do it to Mechira. Deoraita, we don't allow it to Mechira. So, even by a goy. So,
Are there much keep checking that out?
I don't want to hear. We just made a simple. I don't want to hear the answer.
I mean, that's very
It should
hard.
be.
I know on paper that's the way it is. But Tachlis Nesheta, is that the way it is?
It should be. I don't know. Now, I'll tell you what. Many flowerists.
I'm not talking about everything. Not flowers for a second. Heter Mechira, no Deraisa.
If they follow that rule.
Yeah, do they really follow that rule? That's just on paper.
I don't know. It should be. It should be.
Of course it should be. It
Yeah.
reminds me Lahavdil Elef Alafim, the military in the US about being homosexual. Don't ask, don't tell. I'm just saying that's my gut feeling. Maybe hopefully I'm wrong.
Hopefully you're wrong. Yeah.
Hopefully I'm wrong. But I'm just saying.
Oh, so now buying flowers, besides the question is Yushvis or not, it doesn't matter really from the point of view of growing them. That's what I was answering Alan's question from before. It doesn't matter if flowers that have no fragrance to them, which are 95% of the flowers, we buy them just for their beauty. So there's no Kedushat Shvit, but you're not allowed to grow them from the ground. The work in the ground is not allowed no matter what. So you have to make sure if you're buying it from a store that they didn't purchase it from someone who worked the land, because otherwise then you're farnes,
You're an accessory.
You're
participating, helping them, you're assisting,
You're supporting them.
supporting. Right, that's what I want to use. Supporting those who are doing a sin, working the land sinfully. So it's Messiah de Avera. And in the book there of Shulchan Shlomo, it says the flowers that have Kedushat Shvit in them, make sure you buy only from people who know how to do it on Shemitah. Otherwise, you can't support other supporting people. What does that have to do with flowers that have Kedushat Shvit or no have or don't have Kedushat Shvit? No, it makes no difference. You can't buy any flowers from people who don't keep Shemitah. So you need to have on the store a hechsher. It's a new type of hechsher for Shemitah. The stores that sell flowers and plants, it has to have a hechsher on Shemitah. All the produce here that's sold in this store has gone through a supervision, a mashgiach, who supervises over the growing of the plants and flowers, that it's done according to Shemitah rules and laws. Otherwise, you can't buy from the store at all.
Are there, to the Rav's understanding, are there any nurseries in this area that have that?
I really don't know. You have to ask the Motzah Datit. a banana. Yeah. They have a hechsher for
You know what
Shemittah.
to buy for a hechsher.
Right.
Groceries.
I haven't seen flowers of what hearts at all.
I believe that Sderot Chen have Tuda.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Akiva?
No, Sderot Chen. That's in Ramat Chen?
Not Sderot Chen, Prachim Chen, inside the actual Moshav. Is it Chen?
Moshav Givat Chen.
Givat Chen, sorry. Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
Sorry.
Yes. So they have a two.
I asked there originally. Because I wasn't sure. And somebody else came along and said, he believes it's okay. And I'm just trying to think who it was I saw.
So you have to ask, you go to the store and see it.
Yeah.
And which is very difficult to contain produce that's not done wrongfully, sinfully on Shvit when talking about plants and flowers. Because again, they're very seasonal. They're there. They just grow for a few days or weeks, and that's it. You have to replant them all the time. So it most probably has to come from chutzarts, or that we rely on in a greenhouse that's considered like a roof, and matzah menutak. We do all kinds of things that it's on a sheet, plastic sheet that it's disconnected from the ground. We do all kinds of, and we grow them only in the Aravad Romit, where there's all is to begin with. All these type of solutions in order to grow flowers. It's not easy at all. Very complicated for this year to grow flowers. Anyway, just last line for the produce that's with Kedushat Shvit, like fruits and vegetables, and we consume them normally, because otherwise, now the second prohibition besides lo lischora is leochla velo leefsed. We're not allowed to ruin or get rid of good food, good produce that's still edible, and just throw it in the garbage, or crush it and ruin it from be able to eat to be able to eat from it. Or even in cases where a person cuts a branch from a tree which has fruits on it, he can't do that unless he's prepared to eat that fruit, to take that fruit off the branch. But if he's just cutting branches because it's bothersome to him to move to go through the pathway, you have to make sure you're not cutting off branches with fruit. And especially if they're not edible yet, they're still boser blossoming. Yeah, meaning they're not at the state, they're not fully matured. So you can't cut off that branch, because now you're ruining fruit that could be edible and making it inedible forever. It's only a blossoming stage, which can't eat. But to be very careful not to ruin stuff that's good or will be edible, ruin it. Now, that means that when you're at home in the kitchen, we have what's called pach shmitah. We have a special container in the kitchen to have throw into it the remaining fruits and vegetables that we hadn't eaten. Cut up a salad, let's say, we ate most of the salad, and some remained in the bowl, and no one wants to eat from it. First of all, it's a big schus to eat holy fruit of Shemittah, even if you don't hold like the Ramban, who not necessarily himself holds that way, but the Megillas Esther understands the Ramban, interprets the Ramban that way, that there's an actual mitzvahs Esther to eat holy Shemittah produce. The ochla, that you're fulfilling a mitzvahs Esther by eating holy fruits of Shemittah. Okay, that's something else. That's a living here, right? But he holds that way within the Ramban's opinion. Others hold that even the Ramban doesn't hold that way. And even if he does, he's one of the only ones that hold that way. Most Rishonim and Achronim and Poskim hold that there's no actual mitzvah to eat the Kedushat Shvit fruits and vegetables, but you mustn't ruin them or throw them when they're still edible. You have to be very careful. And edible doesn't only mean to human beings, it also means to animals. Anything that animals would eat also carry Kedushat Shvit in them, because they're not tovi or shaveh. The benefiting and the demolishing happened at the same moment. When the animal is chewing that food, they consider as food. At that moment, they're benefiting and getting rid of it at the same moment. That's an atovi or so it has to do such feed. So even if it's inedible to human beings, if it's edible to animals, I even heard this past Thursday from Rabbi Phil Malka in his radio show. He answered back to someone who spoke about banana peels. Do banana peels have Dushat Shvit in them? He said yes, because there are animals that would eat banana peels. Like elephants and so sort.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't see too many elephants in our
Right.
You don't see none of the whole Shemittah.
You don't see the whole Shemittah unless you visit it in the zoo. Yeah. You're right. I think it's a little strange in that psak. If I believe correctly, I had seen one of the books during this year's Shemittah when I went over the halachos. I had seen that only if it's edible to animals that are in your district, your neighborhood, only then they bear the
But
shvit.
dog or cow eat it, that's okay.
Right.
But there's a kangaroo
Or mice.
in Australia that
Mice.
eats it.
Oh, we got polar bears.
A polar bear.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very far-fetched. Very far-fetched. But that's what he said.
I have to leave. My
Okay.
apologies. Be
Okay,
well.
sure.
Good
We're
luck
finishing
to
now.
everybody.
We're just finishing now, right now.
Ah,
Okay, take care.
So wait. Finish now. Wait.
Okay, just the last line. So
Okay,
how
thank you.
throw away anything that has Kedusha Shvita in it. So the way to do it, first of all, try to eat up as much as you can. Not to throw away anything. Try to eat it up as much as you can. But if you've peeled a cucumber and you don't want to eat the peel, but the peel is definitely edible, or you left some salad in your plate or in the bowl, so you throw it into a special pail or special plastic bag that's meant only for Shemitah produce that's going to get ruined. But you don't throw it into your regular garbage, because by throwing it into your regular garbage, that moment you made it inedible. Who's going to eat from the garbage bin? But if you throw it into a separate plastic bag, right now it still remains edible. And even if it's a plastic bag that's accumulating stuff from a day or two, not talking about a week, day or two, it's still edible. It didn't get totally ruined yet. So the moment you're throwing it into the bag, you're not destroying it. You're not totally ruining it. And then eventually it rots, and then you throw it into the regular garbage. So you need to have every 2 or 3 days, switch a bag. And for 2 or 3 days, you throw all those remaining fruits and vegetables you're not eating into that bag. After you finish 3 days, tie that bag, throw it into the garbage. Because on the 4th day, it's already rotting from the first day. You have stuff there from the first day. And then when you throw new stuff in, it gets ruined immediately when you throw it in. But for 2 or 3 days, it doesn't rot yet to the point where it would be disgusting to eat stuff from the bag. Even though no one will eat anything of it, but it's possible until 2 or 3 days. Then it starts rotting and then it's disgusting. So every 2 or 3 days, switch a bag and then throw the bag into the regular garbage. A lot of poskim also allow, just to begin with, to place all the remaining food from each meal into a sandwich bag, let's say, tie it up and throw it into the garbage as is. You don't need to wait for 2 or 3 days till it rots and then throw it into the garbage. Because the moment you throw it inside the bag into a garbage, then you're not ruining it. It's not touching any of the garbage there. So you would eat from it. If you somehow would need to, you take out the bag and you can eat from it because it's all tied up and secured and clean inside. So it's not considered directly ruining it, even if you throw it directly into the garbage, as long as you do it within a tied up plastic bag.
Not too appealing.
Not too appealing, true, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible.
Yes.
Okay, so we're finished with this. Have a good week. Shavua Tov V'Rach. Next week, back to our Shabbos discussions. Unless people have questions on Shemitah, gladly, but otherwise we go back to our Shabbos. Take care. Shavua Tov V'Rach. Bye-bye.